The best horror games don't always prey on obvious fears. We've got you covered for ghosts and monsters, gore and ghouls, but we've also got that quiet, building dread that creeps up on you from the dark, sinister science fiction worlds to explore, and indies that will infect your brain with their own niche brand of terror. In today's video, we will be talking about 15 scariest video game endings that will chill your bones. It varies from person to person and can often hold a titanic grip on our lives. While many of these endings may or may not have the same effect, no one can deny the spookiness they instill, especially after hours of psychological horror. So let's take a look at 15 of the scariest endings in video games. Limbo. Set on the precipice of hell, Limbo sees a lone boy trying to find a missing girl who's apparently his sister. Along the way, he meets either angry folk or dead folk. Oh, and a terrifying giant spider that will quickly murder him. After all the trials, the boy finds himself back in the forest and seemingly finds the girl, but suddenly the game ends. Yep, just like that. Do they perceive the afterlife? Are they stuck in limbo? The unknown can be scary in its own right, and Limbo masters it quite well. Layers of Fear bad ending. A descent into creative madness. Layers of Fear actually has 3 different endings. The scariest ending is arguably the worst though. The painter finishes collecting several different body parts of his wife, who he mistreated until she committed suicide to craft his masterpiece. However, upon finishing her portrait, it becomes disfigured and mocks him for his failure. The painter throws the portrait into a room full of, well, you guessed it, the same painting, and they all begin to laugh before the cycle begins again. The Park. Fun comes first. Person psychological horror carries a much more disturbing story beyond find the missing boy. Lorraine is trying to find her son Callum, and by the end, she seemingly stabs him through the heart with an ice pick. The truth, Lorraine's son has been long gone even before she entered the park, and her neglect resulted in his disappearance. Lorraine's troubling backstory is revealed throughout the game, and her grief as she's being interrogated by the police, seemingly unsure of what's real and unable to move on. Play Dad's masterpiece. Inside Play Dad's masterpiece about control and subliminal messaging ends on perhaps the most random note. The boy, our protagonist, is assimilated into this strange being. Suddenly, we're controlling an enormous blob constructed of people and messy appendages. Upon making its escape, the blob settles outside to simply die, we suppose. Still, that instance of insanity rampaging through the underground facility. It's pretty hard to forget. Little Nightmares. Innocent Girl 6 isn't all that innocent. Not only does she consume a gnome, a mall inhabitant that was just trying to feed her, but she also takes down a lady. This final boss is apparently the one that's behind the kidnapping of children, preparing them for some kind of banquet for her guests. After 6 defeats her though, she devours the lady, taking her powers and using them to murder the guests. Outlast. For a game that throws as much disturbing content at you as humanly possible, Outlast story is surprisingly complex. Journalist Miles Upshur learns that the havoc facing Mount Massive Asylum is due to the Wall Rider, a malevolent being channeled by a host. The Miles kills the host Billy Hope at the game's climax. He's possessed by the Wall Rider and subsequently gunned down. Of course, the screams and gunfire heard as the story closes indicate that the entity is far from dead. Dead Space. You've heard about this numerous times, and you've watched it numerous times. However, like the Beast's appearance and Mulholland Drive, it never fails to get you on some subliminal level. Isaac Clarke's girlfriend, Nicole, for all intents and purposes is dead. It's a sobering revelation that he learns near the end of Dead Space. However, despite escaping the hive mind and the destruction of Aegis 7, what should Isaac be attacked by but Nicole? At the time, we thought she was just a necromorphish version of Nicole that would kill Isaac. As it turns out, it was much worse. Superfire Pro Wrestling Special. The ending to Superfire Pro Wrestling Special is scary in that how relevant it can be. You challenge the conniving world champ after the death of numerous friends, including your trainer. Your girlfriend leaves you, nothing else matters but the world title. Once you win it suddenly dawns on your character. The belt is meaningless. Life is empty. Ultimately, he commits suicide, considering the state of professional wrestlers over the years. It's an ending that presents an uncomfortable truth for those who've destroyed their bodies to entertain us. Drink and Guard final ending. There is no happy ending in Drink and Go, none whatsoever, canon. In fact, the final ending is perhaps the most nightmarish of the bunch. Baby-like creatures called Watchers emerged from the sky and must be fought until coming face to face with their leader, named Mother, defeat her, and suddenly protagonist Chime and his dragon and Jealous are in Tokyo, modern-day Tokyo. They are promptly shot down by fighter jets, and Angela's corpse is impaled on Tokyo Tower. Yeah, we got nothing. And to think this is the canon ending that leads to near Silent Hill bad ending. While trying to find his adopted daughter, Harry Mason runs afoul of Silent Hill, the supernatural town that seemingly manifests the most twisted emotions of its inhabitants. Of course, Mason also has his hands full dealing with a cold and demonic Alyssa. Depending on the player's actions, the worst possible ending will see Dahlia's mother electrocuted by her daughter, though Harry defeats Alexa, even though his daughter isn't retrieved in the process. We eventually cut to his corpse inside of a car. As it turns out, everything was a nightmarish delusion inside his mind as he dies. The Dark Descent. Amnesia, The Dark Descent, the bad ending. In time, players have amnesia. The Dark Descent learned that Daniel did some rather nasty things for Alexander, the master of his mansion, and Brennenburg. Alexander, as it turns out, isn't human, and Daniel can prevent him from returning to his home dimension, effectively taking revenge for all the murder done to keep Alexander alive. However, during the climactic final, it's possible to let Alexander succeed. The Shadow continuously pursuing Daniel will finally track him down though. As bad as Daniel's been, hearing the Shadow tear him apart as his life fades away is sad in a way. I have no mouth and I must scream, and tortures Luna's humans. It's saying something that of the 7 endings in this MS-DOS classic, only one can really be classified as happy otherwise. The most terrifying ending possible is the supercomputer joining up with the Soviet and Chinese supercomputers, while turning the last character played into some jelly thing. Oh, and the remaining 750 humans on the moon are reawakened and tortured for who knows how long. It's not the way that we would have liked to go out, honestly. Fatal Frame Deep Crimson Butterfly Frozen Butterfly ending. When it released, Fatal Frame 2 was lauded for its superb atmospheric horror and storytelling. However, the scariest ending is probably seen in the Wii version, Fatal Frame Deep Crimson Butterfly. If the Ghost Saint is defeated in Chapter 8 without entering Dark Return mode, then Mio won't strangle her sister, Mayu, in the end. Unfortunately, this leads to Mayu strangling her instead. Mirroring says demeanor, the ending sees Mayu with her sister's lifeless form in the Great Hall surrounded by corpses. The post-credit scene further then shows Mayu painting her sister's lips red and Mio's been decapitated. Mayu's laughing and crying seal the deal on this ending's terror home. The plot of Home is equal parts unsettling and annoying because, well, you have to figure out the ending for yourself. It could boil down to the protagonist having no prospects in life, sleepwalking and murdering women, while his wife Rachel went to another man, which then led to the protagonist murdering them as well. It could be that Rachel was a figment of the protagonist's imagination and never really existed in the first place. Regardless, bad stuff happened, and you have to figure it out. Condemned criminal origins. Hey, remember the hate, that creature that was responsible for all the craziness in Metro City, and also for Leland going on a rampage? What if the protagonist, Ethan, suddenly became the hate, further proving that madness lives forever and can't be killed just for further ohms? Condemned will see Leland kill himself in front of Ethan, even if he's spared from death, and that wraps it up. Are you able to try this games? If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing for more.